Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a Major League Baseball slate of 5 games. Doesn't look like we have any weather issues here, so that's a nice advantage. With that said, let's get into the slate here. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, drop your home run calls in the comments below. So, on this slate, we have 5 interesting games. Pitching is a mess. I do want to point out that I like FanDuel a lot better than I like DraftKings today, and I will do FanDuel breakdown at the end of the video. So let's go ahead and get into the pitchers here. We're going to look at Logan Gilbert here first. For Seattle. Now, he has some really good metrics here for this matchup against Oakland. He's got the best matchup on the slate. He's only had 2 bad games all season long. And despite giving up earned runs in every game, his K rate is solid. He's also got a near must play on the slate. I almost used him as a core play. I just avoided that because I think he's going to be super chalky today. And so I do, but he definitely has some utility on this one. The other option really is Logan Webb, who has really good upside, though he isn't starting. He's going to be coming out in the second or third inning, so do keep that in mind here. So that does change his trajectory a little bit, probably. Not sure exactly how that's going to change it, but he's also priced extremely high, though he definitely has some upside in this matchup against Milwaukee, and Milwaukee doesn't look all that great in this particular situation, but they are a decent hitting team, and so they are a little bit of a concern, but his strikeout rate is decent enough for the most part to be viable here, though his price doesn't make him a must-play by any stretch of the imagination. He just draws a lot of attention, I think, because he's really one of 2 good pitchers on the slate when it comes to just absolute fantasy upside. I'm also going to mention a couple more guys here, though. Aaron Nola is in play here against Atlanta, though he's high risk, high reward. The problem here is that the strikeout rate is decent, but he's facing a really tough team, and he definitely has some ups and downs in the strikeouts. And Atlanta's also hitting the ball really well, so I do think that his floor is actually pretty good considering the matchup, but his ceiling is probably a little bit at risk here. Moving on from pitchers, we're going to start looking at catchers here. We're going to start with Adley Rutschman at $4,900. He's got some really good metrics for this matchup. I don't expect Baltimore to be a high-scoring team today, but I do think that he has some potential in this one, so he is definitely a viable option on the slate. Then we'll look at William Contreras for Milwaukee. Now, he has some interesting upside here. He is hitting the ball decently well this season, and he has home run potential. The metrics are really good here, but he will likely face Webb for most of the game, so that does cause a little bit of concern here, but he definitely has good potential. Then we're going to look at Tom Murphy, who is kind of the Hail Mary play on this position for Seattle. I like Seattle stacks today, but they are somewhat risky because a lot of their guys are cheap and kind of Hail Mary plays on this particular slate. But he definitely has the metrics to hit a home run today, so I like his upside. You could also consider JT Realmuto and Sean Murphy on the slate. Catcher is a very good position for fantasy today, as there are decent options across the different price ranges. Alright, so let's move on to our first baseman today. For this position, I feel like there's really good options across the board on the slate. I do think that the value options are better than the expensive options, but there are viable choices across the price ranges here. But we're going to start with LaMonte Wade Jr., who's my favorite play here. He's got really good metrics here on this matchup. He's priced pretty cheap, and has really good potential against pitching for Milwaukee, so I like his upside here. Then we'll look at Alec Bohm, who has a really good, really solid. I have him as a core play here. Alec Bohm has a really solid metric here. The positive here is that he's got a great matchup against the pitcher, and he's got home run potential in this one. He's hit the ball decently well lately and throughout the season, so I like his upside. And he can also play first or third base, and I actually think he's better at third base because you can put another guy here at first. Then I also mentioned Sam Haggerty as a Hail Mary option at this position for Seattle. He's been boom or bust throughout the season. He had a good game yesterday with 13 fantasy points. I think he's got good upside, but he's very high risk, high reward. He's a Hail Mary option for a reason. Also consider Matt Olson, Anthony Rizzo, and Pete Alonso at this position. I just find that LaMonte Wade Jr. and Alec Bohm are the best options at this position by a lot. As for second base, we're going to look at this one. We have some really tough, rough position here. There's not much to like here other than based on recent success, and so that's going to lead us to Morel. for Chicago Cubs, who has really good metrics. He's had big time upside here, but he definitely had a bad game yesterday as he only scored 3 fantasy points and struck out a couple times, which he has been striking out, but he's still managed to hit home runs and stuff a lot lately. This season, he's just started off with a bang. I honestly don't expect it to continue, but as long as he's hitting at this level, he's definitely in play, though his price is extremely expensive. Then we'll look at Jose Caballero for Seattle. Now, he is boom or bust in a sense, but he has value. He's hitting the ball well. I like his upside here, and he's getting fantasy points, which is what we like to see, and he's near minimum price, which really gives him some utility here, especially at a position that's relatively weak. He can also play shortstop, but he's not necessary there so much. Then you could also consider Sam Haggerty here and also Nico Horner, so do keep those guys in mind. Moving into third base here, there's not a lot of, there is a lot of good value here. The top options do seem weak, but Austin Riley is in play. His price is a little bit expensive for what he's been doing, but he is hitting the ball better lately. He's got home run potential, and I like his upside as a result. Alec Boom can play this position. This is where I think he's the best suited to fit due to his price being so cheap and giving him some really good metrics for this matchup. But if you wanted to put him at third base, you could put J.D. Davis for San Francisco here instead of putting LaMont Wade Jr. at first. You could put Davis here at third and have him as a good metric option with good potential for home runs and stuff like that in this particular matchup. San Francisco stack is definitely viable on the slate. You can also consider Eugenio Suarez and Gunnar Henderson at this position as well. It's a very deep position today. Moving at shortstop, this is where I got Trey Turner. There's really not a ton to like at this position other than Turner and Caballero. But they do have some other options available, but these guys are the best. And if you can afford to pay up for any player, I think Trey Turner has the best metrics for this matchup and the slate as an expensive play, and he's my favorite play at that costs a lot of money. Jose Caballero obviously can play at this position as well. You can also consider Francisco Lindor, Dansby Swanson, and Brandon Crawford at this position, though all of them carry some risk, but they do have good metrics. Moving into the outfield, this is probably a decent position with a decent amount of value plays. Not as many as I normally see at this position, even on a 5-game slate like this. And the top plays are probably pretty avoidable, but there are a few good ones. But I think the value plays here are really going to help you put together a pretty good lineup. And this is going to, take your pick of which guys you like the most. So for my outfielders for the expensive plays, Acuna is a top option. He's obviously mega expensive and he has mega upside. He's been hitting the ball extremely well this season. Has home run potential every time up. He also has stolen base potential, and he doesn't strike out a ton. So even though he has struck out a couple times once a game for the last 4 or 5 games. He definitely has big time upside and hits the ball hard. Then we'll look at Cedric Mullins, who draws some really interesting upside in this matchup, despite it's somewhat tough. He's hitting the ball really well lately. He has good metrics and good home run potential. He definitely has the capacity to hit home runs every time up to plate, and he's finally starting to hit the ball better than he was early in the season. And then Aaron Judge for Yankees. He obviously has mega potential for home runs every time he comes up to bat. If he as long as he's in the game, then he is somebody that's viable, though his price is really hard to roster on this particular slate. We'll look at some value plays here. Teoscar Hernandez for Seattle. He had a home run yesterday. He tends to be a home run or bust type of player because he does strike out quite a bit, but he has good metrics for this matchup. In fact, he's better than yesterday's metrics, so I really like his upside, and I liked him a lot yesterday too. He was a near must-play outside of the fact that he tends to have wonky zero-score games. Then we'll look at Nick Castellanos, and I think a Philadelphia stack is definitely in play on the slate. He's got really good metrics for this game. He has been somewhat slumpy lately, and he hasn't hit a home run in a while, but he definitely has the potential here, especially in a great matchup against a guy that gives up some home runs. Then we'll look at Brandon Nimmo, who has really good metrics for this game against Chicago Cubs. I don't necessarily expect a home run here, but I definitely expect him to get a couple hits, and that should lead to some decent fantasy point output. Then we'll look at Conforto for San Francisco. I really do like San Francisco a lot today. It was hard to figure out which guys I wanted to like the most, but he's definitely one that I think has a lot of viability here for home run potential. He's hitting the ball pretty well lately, and his batting average is starting to rise a little bit as a result, but his price is still cheap, and so as long as his price stays cheap, he's in play. And he's got a great matchup here. Mike Yastrzemski for San Francisco is also in play. He has good metrics for this matchup. Not as much of a home run threat as others, but he has hit the ball really well, and he's got good metrics in this one. Then we'll also consider A.J. Pollock as a Hail Mary play, Michael Harris as a Hail Mary play, and Anthony Santander as a viable option as well. So overall, I think the outfield slate is decent. Let's go ahead and move over to FanDuel here and get into this. Now, pitching is really wonky here as we have Logan Gilbert as a top play, and currently Logan Webb does not show up on FanDuel. So if that changes, then he would definitely be a viable alternative to Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert is going to be very chalky today, but I do feel like he's probably worth it. And there's a ton of value on FanDuel, and that really makes him viable. Moving into our catchers and first baseman here, we are going to look at Adley Rutschman and Lamont Wade Jr. as our top two options. But if you can afford to pay up because you go cheap on pitcher, then Matt Olson would be in play. Moving at second base, Thairo Estrada looks like a great option to pay up for. Nico Horner is also available here, and then Jose Caballero is a cheap option if you want to pay down at this position, though he is high risk, high reward on this particular slate. Moving at third base, we have four really solid options, and they're all exactly the same price with Alec Boom, Austin Riley, Eugenio Suarez, and J.D. Davis. Just pick which guy you like the most and roll with them. You could actually pick two because you could put one of those in your utility spots as well. At shortstop, we have Trey Turner, who is way too cheap for this potential here. I love this matchup. He is a core play for FanDuel. Just lock him in and roll with it. And then for the outfielders, we have Toscar Hernandez as a kind of a home run hitting play. Nick Castellanos as a guy that's trying to get out of a slump play. Bryce Harper is a little bit expensive here, but he is viable as he's cheap enough to be rosterable. Brennan Nemo and Michael Conforto and Mike Yastrzemski all have some really good upside in this matchup. And then Santander is kind of a good secondary option at this position. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Make sure to drop a like and subscription, and then make sure to share on Twitter and stuff. So have a nice day, guys.